Welcome back to ZK Auto Reviews, where history roars to life in steel and horsepower. Today, I'm taking you back to an era where the battlefield was dominated by giants, to a time when America's armored ambitions reached towering new heights. You're about to hear the tale of a tank that never fired a shot in war, yet still managed to earn a place in the hearts of military enthusiasts around the world. This is the story of the T29 Heavy Tank, a machine built not just to fight, but to intimidate, to withstand, and to redefine what it meant to be a heavyweight in armored warfare. It all begins in the final stretch of World War II. By 1944, the Allies were pushing through Europe, but reports from the front were unsettling. The Germans had unleashed a new breed of armored beasts, Tiger IIs and Jag Tigers, heavily armored and armed to the teeth. The United States realized it, needed something more than the tried-and-true M4 Sherman or even the newer M26 Pershing. They needed a tank with the firepower to match or exceed anything the Wehrmacht could throw their way. And so, the T29 project was born. This wasn't a design born from desperation. It was born from vision. The U.S. Army knew they were no longer just designing for the present, but for future conflicts, for a world where heavy armor dominance might be the difference between victory and defeat. In 1944, engineers and designers began working feverishly on a prototype that would be unlike anything America had fielded before. The goal? A heavy tank capable of shrugging off enemy fire while returning it tenfold. The T29 was an imposing sight from the moment its blueprints hit the drawing board. At over 70 tons, this wasn't just a tank. It was a land battleship. It stood tall and proud, a tower of armor and steel, with a silhouette that could strike fear before it ever fired a shell. Its armor was thick, more than 279 millimeters on the front of the turret, built to withstand the powerful high-velocity shells of German 88mm and 128mm guns. This was a tank that didn't just survive, it endured. At the heart of the T-29's muscle was its mighty 105mm T5E1 gun. Now let me tell you, this wasn't your everyday cannon. This beast had the power to punch clean through German heavy armor at long ranges. With a barrel over 6 meters long, it delivered sheer kinetic fury. When the T-29 fired, it wasn't just an attack. It was a declaration. And paired with an advanced gun stabilization system and an optical rangefinder, it made this heavy tank surprisingly precise, even at distance. But firepower and armor alone don't make a legend. Inside, the T-29 was packed with innovation. One of the most fascinating elements was the inclusion of a coincidence rangefinder, a high-tech tool for its time that allowed gunners to estimate distances with surprising accuracy. The turret was roomy for a heavy tank, giving the crew space to operate efficiently without the cramped conditions of earlier designs. The T-29 also featured a power-assisted turret traverse system, allowing that massive gun to swing with remarkable speed and precision. Powering this steel colossus was the Continental AV-1790 3V12 air-cooled gasoline engine, producing 810 horsepower. And while it may not sound like much today, for a tank of its era and size, it was an engineering marvel. Sure, the T-29 wasn't a speed demon. It topped out at around 35 kilometers per hour, but speed wasn't the point. This tank was built to move steadily, deliberately, and powerfully, like a juggernaut rolling through the chaos of war. The T-29 was mounted on a torsion bar suspension system, a design choice that offered impressive shock absorption and allowed the tank to handle uneven terrain more smoothly than its weight might suggest. Its tracks were wide and robust, engineered to spread its mass and reduce ground pressure, helping it navigate softer terrain with less risk of bogging down. Everything about the T-29 spoke of deliberate strength and calculated superiority. But here's where the story takes a turn. Despite all its promise, the T-29 was never deployed in combat. The war ended before it could be shipped overseas, and as peacetime returned, military priorities shifted. Yet the T-29 didn't fade into obscurity. Instead, it became a test bed for future innovations. It gave engineers a platform to experiment with advanced fire control systems, armor layouts, and powertrain components, many of which would go on to influence post-war tank designs, including the M103 and even the iconic M60 series. Only a handful of T29s were ever built, 8 to be exact, but they left an outsized legacy. Some were modified into variants like the T30, equipped with an even more massive 155mm gun, or the T34, with experimental features that tested the limits of American heavy armor design. These tanks became rolling laboratories, shaping the future of armored warfare for decades to come. And here's something that always gives me chills. One of the surviving T29s still exists today. It resides at the National Armor and Cavalry Museum in Fort Benning, Georgia. Restored and cared for, it stands as a reminder of what might have been. When you stand before it, you don't just see steel and rivets. You feel the ambition, the determination, and the sheer mechanical artistry that defined America's wartime spirit. Now let's talk about why the T29 continues to fascinate tank lovers even today. It represents that perfect mix of what could have been and what was. It was built for a war that ended too soon for it to fight, yet its legacy echoes in every modern heavy tank. It was a bold answer to a very real threat, a message to the world that America would not be outmatched in the field of armored warfare. And perhaps that's the most powerful part of the T29 story. It's not about how many battles it fought, or how many enemy tanks it destroyed. It's about potential. It's about innovation in the face of uncertainty, about building something great not because it's needed today, but because it may be needed tomorrow. The T29 Heavy Tank is more than a machine. It's a symbol of forward-thinking military engineering wrapped in thick steel and armed with confidence. At ZK Auto Reviews, we love these stories, the ones where machinery meets legacy, where untested prototypes carry the dreams of a generation. The T29 may have never tasted battle, but it absolutely earned its place in the Hall of Armored Legends. If you enjoyed this journey into history, do us a favor. Give this video a like, drop a comment sharing your thoughts or favorite heavy tank, and don't forget to subscribe to ZK Auto Reviews. We've got so many more machines to uncover, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Until then, keep your engines roaring and your curiosity fired up.